The key of Hong Kong and the key of this region is that it's linked to mainland China. You're here in the middle of one of the two most important of high technological development in the world. So again, I'm saying that the GBA is one of the most important region in the entire world. Not to be polite, the Greater Bay Area in China is the lead geese in the development of these geese. Right, well, first I have to say I feel extremely at home here, although I've never been to Macau. I'll explain why. And then I was appointed to be head of London's economic policy for 8 years from 2000 to 2008. One of the key products of that is something called the London Plan, which was the strategic plan for the development of London. So therefore, this question of what is the economy and what is its relationship to the development of very large economic areas is something that I'm extremely familiar with. It might sound peculiar, but in the economy, it is easier to predict what will happen in the next 5 years than it is to predict what will happen in the next 6 months. The reason for that is because the short-term trends in the economy can be affected by all sorts of things. I mean, in the most extreme cases, sometimes by the weather and all sorts of internet conjunctions. Whereas once you begin to take 5-year or 10-year period, and that's what's important for the development of a strategic area, it's determined by the most fundamental factors which affect in the economy. Okay, the fundamental thing therefore I want to do is I want to step back from the short-term developments and look at what are the strategic developments of the Greater Bay Area as they see them. If you want to look at the development of an area, you have to understand what is unique about it, because every major economic area in the world is unique. For me, the most decisive thing, it is one of the two great technological centers of the world. The other one is exactly across the Pacific Ocean, in California. There are no other centers of the development of high technology in the whole world which match either California or the Greater Bay Area. I'll look at the regions. This is what defines, as in my view, all the other features which development of the Greater Bay Area. The most obvious one is obviously the question of its high technological development, which is symbolized, for example, by Huawei, which is now the world's most advanced technological telecommunications company. But it's also, if you take this region, and it's an interconnected fashion, it's also got leading international financial centers, particularly in Hong Kong. In Macau, it's got one of the most important leisure centers in the whole world. And it is not an accident that these are connected. That's in addition to all the normal manufacturing and retail and things you would expect. Why? Because once you have a huge high technology center, this is going to determine many features about the entire region. I was very interested to hear about the development of Macau, for example, in the field of art, because that's what it's going to have. It's going to have the whole region will have to have adjustments to an extremely high cultural level of an extremely skilled workforce. And therefore, it's not a big center like that you're just going to have technological laboratories and then everybody's going to go home and spend the evening watching the TV. They ain't going to do that. So another question is the question of the infrastructure. Okay, of course, everybody knows about the bridge. But I know that the question sometimes is a foolish idea in China that China has enough infrastructure. I think this is a joke. As the region becomes more developed, of course, the needs for the different type of infrastructure will change. You're going to have huge infrastructure that's going to be needed. It's going to be, for example, the development of ICT. Because if you have the development of international ICT centers, which is what's going to happen here, if you have the development of an international financial center further in Hong Kong, this is going to have tremendous ICT infrastructure requirements, in addition to transport ones. Another question, though, that's going to be on the relation to that is what I will call visitourism. if you have a huge international complex of ICT, which is international, and financial, which is Hong Kong, basically the same infrastructure which is required for the business part can be used for tourists. Roughly in London, which is one of the most internationally visited cities in the world, 2/3 of the people who come to the city come for tourism, and 1/3 come from business, but they're using the same hotels, the same airports, the same overlapping infrastructure, which is why I would use a term of rather visitorism about it. Right, look, let's then looking at these fundamentals, what's the more specific things that was key about the question of Greater Bay Area? Firstly, it's important to realize just how big it is. If you take the GDP of the Greater Bay Area, and if it were a separate country, there are only 12 countries in the world which would have a higher GDP than the Greater Bay Area. But even that doesn't capture what is the real dynamic of the Greater Bay Area. If you take the latest GDP statistics in the United States, its growth rate is 2.1%. China's growth rate is 6%. This means that China's economy is growing 3 times as fast as the United States. So therefore, not only is the Greater Bay Area already very, very large, but it is growing much faster than that of the United States, and that's what gives it its particular dynamic. One is the most obvious. I feel so old-fashioned in China, I actually use cash. And this makes me look about 120 years old, etc., etc. And I went, occasionally I have to go into a bank to make transactions with London, and the person who came to interpret it said, look in this bank. The only people who are in this bank are old people and foreigners. So that's it. Can I make an appeal, incidentally, on that? I wish, however, that the new changes made by WeChat and Alipay would make it I hope they will make it a bit easier for foreigners to open up accounts. Then I won't have to stay quite so old-fashioned as I am at the present time. I already mentioned that if you take WeChat, it's just much better, it's much skilled. That's not just merely my opinion, because I have friends who come to China, and they change, and they take up WeChat accounts. They say, yeah, it's just better to use than WhatsApp. Okay. As for the high-speed train system, this is just so much more advanced than anything in Europe and the United States. I mean, it's even ridiculous. The United States advertises a high-speed train as something that goes more than about 140 kilometers an hour, whereas the Chinese ones are going twice as fast. What I want to say about that, therefore, is you already see in the Greater Bay Area a situation whereby the technological level of the Greater Bay Area in some areas is already ahead of California. One final thing I just want to deal with. The people who are creating the problem in Hong Kong have no chance of success. They don't really even dare to say their real aims, which are separatist aims, and they have no chance of carrying out this whatever. Meanwhile, the economic fundamentals of Hong Kong are not going to change. Hong Kong can't be towed away from China and parked somewhere else in the Pacific. The key of Hong Kong and the key of this region is that it's linked to mainland China. Just to give you a comparison, this is an analogy often used of Asia. It's called the flying geese development. That is, that the most technologically advanced country then pulls the other forward. The Greater Bay Area in China is the lead geese in the development of these geese. Finally, therefore, just to summarize what I said, if you'd given my observations on that, you're here in the middle of one of the two most important of high technological development in the world. Nowhere except here in California is as advanced as that. This stimulates the integrated development of the entire GBA because it needs finance, it needs recreation, it needs infrastructure, it needs everything else in the regions. So again, I'm saying that the GBA is one of the most important regions in the entire world. Not to be polite, I hope what I've tried to show you is that it's because it's the truth. Thank you very much.